your 204 voice, tape 1, Mach 1, 10-minute dictation. The following is your word list. Mr. Levy, Greg Sampson Jr., Mary Sampson, Rusty.
And for defense attorney number 1, I will be Mr. Levy.
I will be the witness.
For plaintiff attorney, I am Mr. Cassiopo.
For defense attorney number 2, I'll be Mr. Mann.
And we will start with questioning by Mr. Cassiopo. Ready? Do you know what a deed of trust is?
Not exactly.
Have you ever signed a document called a deed of trust as far as you know?
Maybe, maybe not.
Do you know what a promissory note is?
A promise to pay.
Have you ever seen a document that was entitled trust deed or deed of trust on it?
Possibly.
Have you ever seen a document that said deed of trust or trust deed on it that referred to the property that was the subject of this loan?
Possibly.
Okay, you don't specifically recall it?
No.
Do you recall yourself ever telling someone to record a deed of trust on this property?
No.
Okay, now item number 4 says all writings which evidence here day-to-day activity during the last 5 years, including but not limited to all calendars, all day books, all appointment calendars, all diaries. Now, you indicated that that document that you have in front of you was the only document you've used to keep track of your day-to-day activities within the last 5 years. Is that correct?
Well, I don't have 5 years' worth, just last year.
Would you define what that is, please?
This is my calendar. I keep my appointments on it and what I'm supposed to do that day.
I would like to mark that as Exhibit 1, Mr. Levy, but would you stipulate to a copy being used if you want to have someone in your office copy it?
But I do need it back.
Sure.
May we have him put a tab on it for the time being as Exhibit 1?
Okay, let me just have a fast look at it, counsel. Okay, we can mark it as an exhibit. I'm going to object that it's irrelevant, and I'll make the objection that it's irrelevant to any material issue in this case, but we can mark it.
Now, is this document, which we'll call Exhibit 1, was this something that you've maintained to note your day-to-day activities since January of this year?
This is not this year. This is last year's.
Okay, so it was a document in which you listed your day-to-day activities for the year of 1991, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and this is the only type of document you've had that you've written anything that pertains to the day-to-day activities in 1991?
Yes.
And you don't have any such, you call it calendar, I gather. That is what it seems to be. Have you had any calendars for any prior years?
I always have a calendar.
Do you throw it out after you use it?
Yeah, I keep it 1 year so I can write down certain things I need to know for the school.
Okay, and are these things that you do on a day-to-day basis that you don't put in the calendar? In other words, what do you put? Each one has a little box, and there seems to be some days no entries, some days 1 entry, some days maybe as many as 5 or 6 entries.
Well, I have on Tuesday that I went to the market. It says when my kids go to karate. It has my daily appointments, my facial appointments, doctor's appointments.
Okay, what you don't include, what you do on a day-to-day basis on there.
Well, I'm going to object to that. I mean, if you wanted to be precise and answer that question, you could answer an infinite amount of things.
Okay, do you list any business meetings that you have down here?
No, I list my meetings specifically. I just don't list, having sex or going to the bathroom or things like that.
Okay, so if you had a meeting with your father, would you generally list it there?
I don't generally have a meeting with my father.
If you had a meeting with your father in 1991, would it be your normal policy to put it down there?
I don't have a meeting with my father.
Do you ever meet with your father at all?
Well, I invite him for dinner, but I don't consider that a meeting.
Would that be listed on there?
Not necessarily, no.
What about a meeting with your mother? Would that be listed there?
No.
What about a meeting with Elena?
All right, counsel, just so we get it straight. When you say meeting, you simply mean being in the same place, face to face. You're not talking about the purpose of being there, is that right?
Right, thank you. That's what I mean.
No.
Okay, did you ever go to any kind of an escrow company to sign any documents pertaining to the transaction?
No.
Okay, were they brought to you?
Yes.
And who brought these documents to you?
Either my husband or my father. I don't recall.
Okay, can you identify those documents that you may have signed?
You mean the name of them?
Yeah.
No.
Can you describe them?
No.
Okay, but you do recall signing some documents?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to make a copy of that, and that will be used in place of the original as Exhibit 1. Item number 5 is all writings which evidence payment of any monies by her to plaintiff during the last 2 years. Have you ever paid any money to Greg Sampson within the last 2 years?
That's Greg Sampson Sr., so you're clear about that.
Right.
No.
Have you ever paid any money to Mary Sampson?
No.
Have you ever paid any money to Rusty Sampson?
No.
Have you ever received any money from any of those individuals?
No.
Have you ever seen a document that was labeled appraisal of the subject property?
I don't think so.
Have you ever discussed with anybody the value of that property?
No.
Nobody told you that this property is worth at least as much as the $200,000 that you were lending Rusty?
No, I trust my father.
Did he ever tell you anything that led you to believe that the property was worth at least $200,000?
I'll object as asked and answered, but you can respond.
What did you say?
I said that you had already answered the question, but you're free to answer it again.
I think I did answer the question.
I understand.
No, I didn't.
The answer is no, you didn't, right?
For the third time, I think that's right. That's what happened.
Well, okay, but there is all this interplay back and forth, and I just wanted to make sure she was answering the question that was asked. Okay, item number 7 was all writings which evidence all appraisals. You've never seen any type of writing that stated what the value of the property was, is that correct?
I don't believe so. Maybe I signed something, but I don't recall looking at what I signed.
Okay. And do you recall ever entering into any type of written agreement or contract with any other party to this action within the last 5 years?
Well, I'll object. It calls for a legal conclusion, but you can answer it.
I don't know what you mean.
Okay, do you have any written contracts that you've entered into?
This is my whole file on this deal.
Mr. Levy, is there a response to number 8, which is all written contracts?
Between any party?
Right.
Yes, there is.
Okay, you're handing me an installment note that says original at Industrial Bank. I would like this marked as Exhibit 2.
Counsel, again, can we please have copies of these attached?
Sure, I'm just going to use one of these tabs, if I may, and mark it Exhibit 2. Okay, have you ever sent anything to any other party within the last 5 years?
Just my father, none of those people you named.
What have you sent to your father?
Birthday cards or letters?
Nothing pertaining to this.
Nothing pertaining to this.
Okay, you had discussions with your father about this transaction prior to lending the $200,000, right?
Maybe a brief discussion.
You had discussions with your husband?
A brief discussion.
Did you take any notes of any meetings that you had with either your father or your husband pertaining to the transaction?
No.
Do you have notes of any conversations you've had with any party to this action?
No.
All telephone bills from every telephone in her name within the last 3 years. Have you brought those?
No.
Okay. Is there a reason why not?
Did we discuss this?
Well, I thought we had. Shall we go off the record and discuss it out of the room, and then we'll come back and tell counsel what the story is?
Well, can we just skip that right now and just continue on with the other categories?
Yes.
Okay, we'll get back to it. Item number 13 is all notes of every meeting you've had with Greg Sampson Jr. And you said you've had none, correct?
Right.
Okay. 13A is all writings that you sent to Greg Sampson Jr. within the last 5 years. And you've sent none, is that correct?
Correct.
All writings received from Greg Sampson within the last 5 years. And you've received none?
None.
All contracts that she and Greg Sampson have been parties to in any capacity during the last 5 years.
I'll object. Calls for a legal conclusion, but you can answer it if you can.
I don't know if one of the things I signed was a contract.
Is that Exhibit 3, which was the package?
I gave you everything I had. I don't know what was in there at all.
All right. All writings that you relied on to lend Greg Sampson Jr. any money within the last 5 years. Do you have anything in response to that request?
No.
Other than what's been produced, in other words, counsel?
Did you rely on any documents prior to lending Greg Sampson Jr. the money, the $200,000?
No.
Okay. Item number 18 is all writings you relied on to ascertain if Greg Sampson or the Sampson Trust had the ability to repay any loans you gave him or it. Are there any documents that you relied on?
No.
Did you ever hear of the Sampson Trust? Have you ever heard that term?
Yes.
When did you first hear that term?
Probably when I lent them the money.
Okay, and did someone mention that name to you, the Sampson Trust?
I'm sure that the name was mentioned. I remember the name.
You don't know who mentioned it to you?
Probably my father or my husband. That's all. I've only talked to those two people regarding this until now with the attorney.
Okay, you've never met me before, have you?
No.
You've never talked to me, as far as you know, on the telephone or personally.
As far as I know,
Have you ever received any documents from me?
just since this lawsuit, I see things going back and forth between attorneys.
Prior to this lawsuit, have you ever received anything